Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folani. Hope you had a great weekend. Well, my guest this morning is Mr. Johnson Chukwu. He's a stockbroker, he's an economist, and he also heads up Cowry Investments, which is, you know, a money, finance, investment kind of a firm. We leave it at that. He smiled at that. At least I put in Cowry.
Cowry Asset Management.
Cowry Assets Management. You know, but thank you very, very much for coming on. We really wanted you to come and help us crack some of those things we've been hearing in the news, especially for the non-economist or economics students' point of view. Recession has been in the news of recent, and that's when Madam Finance Minister spoke to the Senate and had said that technically we are in recession. But she was quick to say that no cause for alarm, it's a technical recession, but that she didn't think we should be dwelling on definitions now. Rather, it's on what the strategies are, and she's confident that it's not worrying. Her counterpart in the budget office had spoken in a similar vein. So what I wanted to ask you, Johnson, is what is a straightforward, if you want, development economics for dummies? What is a recession?
Okay, maybe development economics for 101. Well, because there's no dummy again.
Not at that level, right?
Well, basically, a recession is a contraction. Let me use another word. A reduction in the size of output of goods and services produced in a country over 2 quarters of 3 months each. So when there's a consecutive decline in the GDP growth rate, not decline, reduction in size, or contraction, then we say the economy has gone into a recession. But that decline must occur in 2 consecutive quarters at the minimum before you say a country has gone into a recession. And that is what the minister was saying, that technically speaking, that although the figures have not been formally announced by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, but all the indicators point to the fact that the second quarter of 2016 would also witness a contraction in the size of the Nigerian economy. And that was why she said that the economy has technically gone into a recession.
Okay, and you know, just before my next comment, I was reading something that another economist and financial expert said, talking about Bismarck Rewani. He had said that he feels that if anybody is hoping that there will be a recovery from the negative growth in the third quarter, that just might be too optimistic an assumption. What would you say to that comment?
Well, I think that's clearly obvious. Nothing has happened. The third quarter starts from July 1st and ends on September 30th. We're already in the middle of, towards the end of July, and we just have barely 2 months to the end of the quarter. And nothing has happened. The economy is still going into a further crisis. I mean, we are still seeing further contraction. We're not seeing improvement in productivity. We're not seeing improvement in the level at which companies are producing. Okay, so there's nothing so far that are indicators that the GDP will begin to expand in the third quarter of this year. So it's clearly obvious that, look, we're not going to see any growth, any recovery in the third quarter. And even the IMF figures further buttress that. IMF has come out to say, look, Nigerian GDP is likely going to contract by 1.8% in this fiscal year.
That is our gross domestic product, which is what you were saying.
Yes. So in effect, what they are saying is you are going to see a reduction in the size of our output of goods and services by 1.8%. Remember the first quarter of this year, we only had a contraction of 0.36%. So it then means that the contractions we're going to see in the 3 remaining quarters when the figures have come out will actually outweigh what we saw. In fact, what that means that the economy will worsen in the next quarters of this year.
And as she was, well, now that you brought IMF into the matter, the minister had also opined that, you know what, I'm not too worried about IMF. They do what they do. They even gave a negative forecast to Britain following the whole Brexit affair. But without prejudice to that, she was of the opinion in the Senate that we should be focusing on what systems have been put into place. Now, before I go further, I just wanted to find out from you, you've given us, you know, a clear-cut explanation of what a technical recession is. What about a full-blown recession? just for comparison?
Well, full-blown recession, maybe you're talking about a depression.
Oh, I see. If it gets that to that
yes,
level, then the term becomes almost interchangeable.
Yes, a depression will be basically a more severe contraction in a GDP over a longer period of time.
Okay, okay. When it goes way beyond the two quarters that we're using.
Talking about 3 quarters, 4 quarters, 2 years, then you're talking about depression.
I see.
An economic depression. And it's actually a more difficult thing to come out of a depression than a recession. Just like even if you look at the simple grammatical meaning of recession, a break, okay, a depression, a
mental situation, where a person is really, really depressed. God forbid we should come to there. And that seemed to be what she was at pains, along with her colleague minister, to sort of reassure us about that. It's not going there. Because the next question then is, how did we get to this pass? Well, she had said that she didn't want to go into the blame game. It wasn't profitable, but that she had inherited negative reserves. And all of this plays in. But she wants us to, as she was saying, also look at some areas of savings, the fact that we are much more disciplined with spending than we had ever been. She cited, for instance, fuel subsidy. From when we were subsidizing somewhere in the region of 45 million liters a day, and it's dropped down to 26 million liters a day now, which is pure savings. Those kind of things. Are you reassured by the minister and the way she made her presentation, which I'm sure you must have examined line by line?
Well, for me, the minister's job is to give us hope. So one of the things he had to sell is hope, to restore confidence in the system. I agree with them that they've done one of two things, a few things to restructure the economy. But I think a lot still has to be done to reverse the decline in the economy.
Okay.
It's good that we've made away with the issue of subsidy. It's good that we've allowed Naira to adjust to relatively reflect the market fundamentals. We still need to do a couple of other things to turn the corner. And I'm expecting that the minister will come out with a well-articulated economic policy plan that will reverse the clear decline we are witnessing in the economy. The reality of the matter is that the economy, our Nigerian economy of this nature, a frontier economy, an emerging economy of the size of Nigeria's economy has no business with recession, being in recession. Because
would that have been as a result of mismanagement without looking to put blame anywhere?
Yes, I would say we have endogenous and exogenous factors. You have external factors like the drop in oil price, which can be traced directly to the crisis we are witnessing in foreign exchange earnings.
But because I was going to ask you that question, but the two are interlinked. I was going to ask you about the plummeting of the Naira.
So you have that's one of the triggers of the situation we have found ourselves. One of the clear factors that contributed to the situation we found ourselves. But there are several other factors. If you look at the foreign exchange earnings from sale of crude account about 90% of Nigeria's foreign exchange income. But in terms of GDP size, the oil and gas sector accounts for less than 15% of the GDP. And we're talking about a contraction in the GDP.
Okay.
Okay. Agricultural sector accounts for about 22 to 25% of the GDP. Manufacturing sector was doing about 10% of the GDP. Telecoms about 10% of the GDP. Trade about 13 to 15% of the GDP. So when you had situations where the agricultural sector was growing about 13% previously, we saw the telecommunications sector at some point was growing about 15%, dropped about 19% GDP growth rate. We saw trade accounting for about 15% of the GDP growth rate. So, but what we have witnessed in the past couple of months is that we have seen a contraction in the growth rate of the oil and gas sector. We have seen a negative growth rate, in fact, not contraction, negative growth in the oil and gas sector, negative growth in the manufacturing sector.
Negative growth meaning making less this time
shrinking
than before,
yes,
in the same period.
Yes.
Before.
We've seen negative growth in the construction industry. We've seen negative growth in the manufacturing sector. So when you sum up this negative growth, they now outweigh the slow growth we are now even witnessing in telecommunication and agricultural sectors. So, but the key thing is that we need to look at these sectors and ask ourselves, how do we restore growth in those sectors? The trade and the trade sector, we know clearly the scarcity of FX was a major factor. The manufacturing sector, the delay in changing the policy on FX was a major factor, and therefore scarcity of FX.
FX being foreign exchange.
Yeah, foreign exchange to the manufacturing sector. What of the telecom sector whose growth has slowed? What do we need to catalyze that growth? What of the construction industry whose growth is largely driven by government capital expenditure? What do we need to restart that? What of the agricultural sector whose growth has also slowed down, though not in the negative? So we look at we need to look at all the sectors and come up with a clear plan to restore growth. Because one of the factors we enjoy as a country is that we have a huge consumer market. And that is actually where we weigh highest in the cost of competitiveness index, global competitiveness index. So we need to leverage on that.
Okay, indeed, it's well you just said that, because I was going to point out to you what, again, what you must have heard her say, that for the avoidance of doubt, potentially speaking, it's really bright. In other words, Nigeria still is the largest economy in Africa. You got any comments on that?
Yeah, those are facts. But just like if you remember when Hillary Clinton came to the country, sometime I think 2011 or 12, she said that we should be tired of calling us potentials, talking about the potentials, and talk of how to realize those potentials. You see, we are the largest country in Africa in terms of population, in terms of GDP size, but in terms of per capita income, we don't rank among the top 10.
Okay.
So in terms of well-being, welfare, comfort, economic.
Now, and when you talk welfare, about, very sorry, Johnson, I apologize for interrupting you. Just because, as I said, this is really development economics for the ordinary folk. When you're talking about per capita income, when you're looking at the total income that's then divided by the number of people,
the population of the country,
our population, to give us a sort of a statistical
figure. If you take, for instance, the South African economy is about $286 billion. The South African population is less than 50 million. Nigerian economy is $510 billion economy, but our population is close to 200 million. So when you divide the 286 or 284 billion by 48 million, and you
South Africans.
Yes, South Africans. And you compare that to dividing 510 billion by about 180 million. So the figures are completely various.
Yeah. So that the per capita income is also something you have to consider.
That is
right next to this whole business about being the largest economy in Africa.
Absolutely.
And in the instance of the per capita situation, we're not on the charts.
We don't even rank among the top 10 in Africa.
Well, even though Hillary Clinton has said what she has said, that we should begin to look at how to realize
those potentials.
these very potentials that we are saying. The finance minister, Mrs. Adeosun, seemed quite confident that they've done a lot of work and that we should begin to see the results of that. And you had said yourself at the beginning that what we now need to do is come up with a well-articulated plan to indeed come out of this recession in a timely manner so that we don't go beyond technical. What does this take? Because, and it's interesting when you pointed out that the oil and gas sector is not actually, because many people think that, oh, everything is oil and gas and 90%, so if anything goes wrong there, we're in trouble. But there were some encouraging figures from other sectors. So how does that work?
That's why I said that the key thing we need to come up with specific sectorial plan on how to grow the sector. I'm going to give you a few instances of what we've done in the past as a country. Sometime in 1999, between 2000 and 2001, the government of Olusegun Obasanjo, former President Olusegun Obasanjo, came up with a cement industry plan and said, look, Nigeria cannot have a lot of limestone and continue to be a net importer of cement. They came up with incentives that encourage people to go into cement production. The likes of Lafarge expanded their production. The likes of Bua, the likes of Dangote, they all began to expand. Then we moved from a 2 million metric tons of cement production. Today we're doing more than 30 million metric tons of cement production.
That's almost 15 times increase.
Today Nigeria is a net exporter of cement.
Okay.
We no longer import cement.
Okay.
It was a concerted, well-thought-out plan with appropriate incentives to encourage people to go into, to call it a capital to go into that sector. And it has produced results. Sometimes also that government came up with a cassava plan, which unfortunately was not followed to a conclusive end.
Okay.
We now have a sugar industry plan. Sugar. We have, I'm hearing government talking about wheat. We need to come up with something to do with palm oil, cocoa. These are areas where we have comparative advantage. That we could actually ratchet up production within a period of 10 years. You see, in terms of economic development, it's not going to be an overnight stuff.
Okay.
So, but the key thing that we need to begin to lay the foundations to win our country of products that we have competitive advantage to produce. I did mention that the agricultural sector, the previous government did a lot of agricultural plans on how to make agriculture a business-oriented venture. This government is following suit. We need to see them address the issue of Land Use Act, smallholder farmers. We need to address the issue of level of productivity of agricultural products. The government is talking about rice production. We need to see how they want to encourage both upland rice production and to ensure that we do not only produce rice in the swamp, but we can also produce rice in an upland areas, so as to have two-season rice production. We need to look at those areas with production. How are we stimulating that? Are we extending the level of irrigation in the country? The key things are economic agents are rational, and they will put their resources in areas where they will earn reasonable level of return. The sugar plan the government has, it's obviously going to produce what, if it is consistently implemented. We know of expansive sugar plantation now being cultivated in the north. One thing we should always take as a country is that there's no country that developed by accident.
It's all by planning.
It's all by a hard core plan, ferociously driven by leadership.
And
and that's what seemed to be lacking over these 40, 50 years of independence.
And assuming that this is known now, this therefore places a very high responsibility on those in charge now, because this is not a secret, what you've just said. It does take creative thinking, it takes knowledge, it takes thinking outside the box to come up with what you economists and commentators have always said. We just need an enabling environment. You said it, that economic agents are very, very logical. Nobody's going to go where he's not assured of a fair chance of a return. And that, I think, how does the Naira and its abysmal state now, how does it factor into this? The Naira is closer to 400 Naira than to the dollar than anybody is happy to admit. On one level, it does mean that whatever dollars we have, we will be getting a whole room full of Naira. So what is that all about?
Well, let me start by saying that I'm one of the advocates, and I remain an advocate for a liberalized exchange rate. But a liberalized exchange rate is not a silver bullet. There are policies that should be implemented to complement a liberalized exchange rate, particularly in a country whose main product is only a single product and whose term of trade is no longer favorable. And what I mean by term of trade, the price at which you sell your product relative to what you buy other people's products. So we've seen oil trading at about $48, $50 now, between $43 and $50 now.
And by the way, there was a time when it was closer to 100, maybe even over 100.
No, we've seen under 100, we did 147. Under Jonathan's government, it was around 120. But it dropped to as low as $30. But the key thing is this: in situations where you have adjusted your exchange rates, a couple of other things need to be done as a sequel to that, so as to achieve the overall objective of stabilizing the exchange rate. The challenge we have today is that the confidence level has not been restored.
Okay.
And therefore, inflows have not resumed. The purpose of adjusting the exchange rate to be market reflective is to encourage multiple sources of inflow beyond the earnings from sale of crude oil. But those other multiple sources have not come in because the process of price formation has not settled. Price formation is that we get to a point where we say this is about the price, the exchange rate. So in that case, if it's 300, it's 300 today and next week and next 2 weeks. And then I can plan based on the fact that I'll bring in my money at $300, 300 naira to $1. Not that I'll bring in 300 naira to $1 today and tomorrow is 320. So that has to be resolved. And how would that be resolved? Unfortunately, the central bank is at the epicenter of resolving it. And what do I mean by that? Because the central bank in Nigeria is the recipient of 90% of our foreign exchange earnings. And therefore, since the other sources of foreign exchange flows have not resumed, central bank is the one who has a wherewithal to stabilize the exchange rate. Unfortunately, again for us, because of the long delays in taking that decision and the earlier decision to defend the naira, a lot of resources have been dissipated to defend the naira. So the central bank no longer have all the warm war chest that it should ordinarily have to stabilize the exchange rate. So what next do we need to do?
Okay.
I've advocated that today the central bank and the federal government needs to accept that we need some level of financial support from international financial agencies. We need it.
Even though that is seen as a boogie by a lot of people.
Yes,
but don't go borrowing. You see, the key don't thing go to IMF.
The key thing is that that's coming from a phobia for borrowing, because previous borrowings were frittered away by previous governments.
Okay.
So if we have a more serious government in place and we're 100% sure that the government is prudent enough and is not likely going to allow our resources to be frittered away for reckless purposes, then there is nothing wrong with borrowing on its own. Okay. Because borrowing is all about leverage. It's all about fast forwarding your productive activities to today so that you can further enhance that productive activity. So if you enhance your capacity to produce today, it further helps you to build capacity in the future.
Indeed.
The option we have is that if you say we are going to build this economy based on our life savings, which is inconsequential, then it takes us hundreds of donkey years to develop.
Okay.
So we can fast track that. But back to what we're saying, the government needs what you may call a budget support funding or a currency support line, credit line, where the IMF or the World Bank or even any of our bilateral relationship partners like China could provide us something like a 10 billion line. That 10 billion line does not necessarily mean you're going to draw 10 billion. It's just to restore confidence, to say, look, we have a 10 billion to meet your needs. And then the central bank will now need to meet interbank demands and interbank. Remember, you don't have limitless naira. So if central bank should supply interbank by $100 million every week, for instance, I am clear in my mind that in the next 6 to 8 weeks, they would have made the demand backed up by naira.
Okay.
And then they will stabilize the exchange rate.
Okay. And we're going to come back and talk about this some more. But meanwhile, Mr. Odedi, I have to thank you for holding on all that while. Please go ahead now, Mr. Odedi.
Good morning to the guest analyst.
Good morning.
I have listened to several experts on this issue of recession. You know, many of them propound a lot of theories telling us that if this had been done, if this had not been done. Personally, I feel that even if you put all, let's say 20 Nobel laureates in economics and bring them into this present economy, they will achieve little or nothing. Because our major income earner has reached the rock bottom, you know. And apart from that, our output has decreased considerably because of the action of the scavengers. So what magic do we expect this government to perform? What magic wand do you think they will just bring in? There can't be a quick fix to this issue, because quite a lot of people, even those who are supposed to be educated, some of my neighbors will come and meet me. Is this not the way you people are conversing for? see what has come upon us and all that. I really tell them.
Yeah, but Mr. Dede, nobody,
Yes,
nobody has said that this is going to be quick. Johnson said it inter alia as we have been coming along, that there's no shortcut to this. It's going to take a while, but
Okay,
we have to start.
Okay, I just joined you.
Oh, okay.
But I want to also say, sir, that until we take the issue of corruption very seriously in this country, there is nothing, we can't go anywhere.
Okay.
If we start dealing seriously with people who are corrupt, then Nigeria is serious about moving forward. But this not all these dilly-dally salsa dance with doing corruption and the judiciary.
Sure.
There must be a tsunami in our judicial system before we can start seeing Nigeria make progress. Good morning.
Well, thank you very much, and good morning to you. Well, as you said, you joined us late because some of these things have been covered. And corruption, yeah, in fact, that was the very last point that Johnson made, that, look, people who are scared of borrowing from international organs like the IMF, he has just explained that, yeah, that's a fear of corruption, that whatever was borrowed for doesn't get achieved in the sense that it would have been frittered or stolen away. But could you explain perhaps the president's insistence on a non-devaluation of the naira, and if that factors into here, and whether you or not you think he has relented a bit on that or not?
Well, the president already said in one affair, I think that was his 1-year anniversary speech, that while he said it on one hand that a lot of economists have come to him to say, but he's not convinced, he also said that the value of a country's currency depends on the country's export capacity. So that defined the concept of adjusting the exchange rate. That since our foreign exchange earnings have declined as a result of one, unfavorable balance of trade, terms of trade, and two, the reduction in our oil production, and the fact that we have a mono-product export economy, that it then follows that if the strength of our foreign exchange earnings, our export is weak, our currency will consequently not be strong, because like the president also said in that speech, that the strength of a country's currency is dependent on its export earnings. So given our current export earnings vis-a-vis our import demand, you cannot have a strong currency. And I think the president, in as much as he reluctantly accepted to that, has already reconciled himself to that reality.
Okay, all right. Mr. Samali, thank you for holding on.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Been a long time I've been trying, I've never gone through. So my question this morning is, where are we? Are we on recession?
Oh dear.
I watched Kemi Adeosun last week.
Mr. Samali, Mr. Samali, Mr. Samali.
Overnight, Mr. Udoma came out and tell us a different story. So where are we?
Okay.
This government should carry us along. If you carry us along, Nigerians will listen. I watched this morning, pages on newspaper, a liter of kerosene is now 700 naira. Where are we going from? Where are we coming from?
Okay,
Please.
Mr. Samali.
Nigerians are waiting.
I thank you very much for calling in, Mr. Samali. I suspect you joined us late because if we've been together from the top, that matter would have been addressed as to where are we coming from, where are we going. Where we are, well, I don't know. The only part of it that might have been contradictory in all of that is not even directly related to the economy. I think it was where the secretary to the government said constituency projects might not actually be, taken in because we simply can't afford it. But then the finance minister and the budget minister have since said that everything in the appropriation is for implementation, and that just take what we are saying now. So that's not a flashpoint, I imagine. But I don't know, unless you can fathom what he's saying about there being contradictory signals. There have not been contradictory signals from this government, have they?
Well, I'm not aware of the issue of contradiction as it relates to the performance of the economy. The economy, everybody accepts. Even a man on the streets can feel that the economy has slowed down drastically. I mean, he did mention of the fact that kerosene is doing this price and all those things. Demand, people are not able to meet the demands of their daily living.
Yes.
So clearly, it's no brainer. You don't need to be an economist to even understand business. Your pocket will tell you that the economy is in recession. But in any case, I need to make a reference to the first caller's comment.
Sure.
He said that even if we bring 40
Nobel laureate economists,
that they
will flounder in Nigeria.
I think that's not true. The reality of the matter is that, like I mentioned earlier, the position of any economy is a cumulative of choices made by past and present leaders. Because the economy is not something you build overnight. So the effect of whatever decisions we took to have a monoproduct economy is still reflecting on how well we can weather economic storm. But it is also the leadership role to turn around the corner, to come up with policies that will break from the negative direction and turn to the positive direction. And I think that is the challenge the government has now to face up to.
Okay.
That the reality is that we are a monoproduct economy, but it does not mean that we should raise our hands up and surrender.
Just roll over and
yes. Die. No. If we take the appropriate steps, I always use as an example. If you cast the mind back to the 80s, Ghana was a basket case in Africa. Ghanaians were here as shoe cobblers.
Yes.
The women were walking the streets in Lagos and other Nigerian cities. To the point that if you remember that Ghana must go, that Nigeria had to export them because they were actually constituting themselves nuisance to the society in Nigeria. Today, irrespective of the challenges that Ghana is facing today, Ghana still remains one of the strongest destinations for foreign direct investors in Africa. Ghana has turned a destination where Nigerians are sending their children to school.
Yes.
Ghana has turned a destination where Nigerians are going to on holidays because...
And some businesses, some Nigerian businesses
are there.
Are relocating to Ghana.
And because at some point, under the leadership of Jerry Rawlings, he decided to put a stop to the descent and began to build the political and economic structure on which Ghana turned the corner.
Okay. And often when these things happen in countries and economies, if not handled carefully, I guess there could be a political cost to pay. And but let's just go on a quick break, and then we'll come back and look at this, and also strategies for bringing us out of this recession, technical recession, in a sharp fashion. Stay with us, please. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. If we've been together from the top, having this informative conversation with Johnson Chukwu, who is a stockbroker as well as a finance expert. And we're looking at the whole matter of the technical recession that we're in, what it means, and perhaps more importantly, what can be done about it so that we can come out of this. We've been through some very interesting, definitions for the non-economists among us, and we've heard about GDP. Compare our GDP, for example. We're the largest economy on the continent. Yeah, that is so. But then nip across to South Africa and look at what their GDP is. So there are all sorts of, it's always an interesting balancing act that economists and governments, for that matter, are trying to work with. But to come out of this, you were saying that the government will have to come up with a very, very well thought out and articulated plan to show growth in other areas beyond the oil and gas, which you have said, quite frankly, is just there. There are other sectors where it is comparable in some instances. And before we went on break, I was speaking about the political consequences of some necessary actions that will be taken. Would you reflect a bit on that? Seeing the right way, but perhaps not being able to go there. I'm reminded of in the Sudan back in the day, somebody the story came out that a mere increase in the price of bread, for example, caused a near catastrophe.
Well, interestingly, ours is a very unique instance, and I think it's something we should immediately exploit, which
well,
unfortunately...
sorry, I'm just told that an Habib has been holding on since, whatever since means. Okay. So let me quickly put Habib in.
Okay.
And good morning, Mr. Habib.
Yeah, good morning, Uncle Yori.
Thank you for calling, sir.
Yeah, I was watching you guys before Nepal took the power. But I would just like to ask your guest that, in his own view, what has the government done right in this season of technical implementation that the finance minister said we were in? And I would also like to couple it with, in his own view, likewise, what does he think is the realistic approach that the government of this administration can introduce to curb this technical inflation before it gets...
Thank you very much, Mr. Habib. In fact, that is the question that we are answering right now. In fact, we had to interrupt an airing of that question to take your comments. So thank you very much. And we'll just let Mr. Chukwu go back to what he was suggesting as to the things that now need to be done to bring us out of this technical recession.
Okay, let's start from the issue of the difficult decisions. One of the things we must give credit to the president is that he is currently still enjoying a reasonable level of political capital.
Okay.
Okay.
The goodwill is there.
Goodwill.
Yes.
He can, unfortunately, the longer he delays to take some of the difficult decisions, the more that goodwill will be eroded.
Okay.
Take, for instance, he has taken very two critical decisions that others tried to do, and it led to shut down the economy. The issue of adjustment in price of petroleum products.
Sure.
We've moved from 87 naira to a liter to 145, and there was not even a whimper from the civil society.
Yes.
And
but sorry I wanted to come in here. Maybe you'll be able to explain it. We are hearing from the authorities that now that is in place, petrol has gone to 145 a liter. We're actually consuming 26 million liters a day, as opposed to in the past when government was subsidizing 45 million liters a day. Nobody banning anything, nobody restricting anything. The consumption figures they've seen is just 26 at 145 a liter. But it was 45 at whatever at the lower price. What's going on there?
Well, what I think has happened, two factors. One factor is that because it is no longer profitable to smuggle petroleum product out of the country, because the price you will buy it here to export it to smuggle it to neighboring countries, the price you get there will not compensate for your cost. So the volume that was going to neighboring countries as a result of smuggling has completely...
Which was a form of sabotage.
Yeah, has completely been eliminated. And that is why some of us have always argued that if you institute market-oriented policies, you will even to some extent eliminate the incidence of corruption, because it will no longer be attractive.
Yes,
because you're taking to engage some certain shortcuts.
You're taking away unfair shortcuts.
Yes. Second factor is that because the economy has slowed down and purchasing power of Nigerian citizens have actually declined, people are now rationing their consumption.
Yes.
And that simply means that the amount they would have put into fueling their vehicles is no longer as huge as what it used to be. So people, one, will reduce the number of places they go on driving tour. Sometimes people are hiking a ride with their neighbors to go to work, so as to keep their cost of fuel consumption low. People who use petrol generators at home are maybe now running at for shorter period of hours, because they can no longer afford the longer period of hours of fuel consumption. So in terms of consumption, local consumption, the decline in economy has put some senses in Nigerians on how to consume such discretionary products.
That's the Nigerian public and in effect the Nigerian consumer.
Yes, the Nigerian consumer.
Just like Kemi Adeosun was saying that even in government that they are so disciplined and prudent with their spending now, it's a bit akin to what you're describing with the ordinary man, where he could fill his tank anyhow before. Now people don't fill their tank anyhow. In fact, people will now say put 1,000 naira. Yeah. Now let me see where that one will.
And instead of riding around the whole of Lagos, they will ride to where they're going to.
Exactly. Mr. Abdul Karim calling in from Adamawa. Good morning.
Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, we have heard what this economy expert are talking about, and it's one of the wonderful advice to presidency today that I had. on air today, watching it live. But my own advice to Mr. President, as far as they are saying we want to boost economy, but my own personal advice to them, before I left my local government during this Boko Haram issue from Madagali Kulak, let them acquire the same skill that former Minister of Agriculture did over the fertilizer. We are not saying let them do it now. When the economy revives, let them bring that policy of former Minister of Agri. Because that what Minister of Agri done over fertilizer, in my village, in Madagali Gulag, I cannot go to market and buy fertilizer. When they are selling it 7,000 to 10,000 by day. But when I go to government store, I will buy it at the rate of 2,000. And maybe I have use of 2 or 3 bags. They will give me 5 to 10 bags. So that period of that Minister of Agri, we didn't suffer a lot during the farms. But now, when this government came want to boost the economy of agriculture so that we can feed ourselves, let them borrow that policy. We cannot say they will just do it totally, but let them take the advice so that they will look into what that past government did over the agriculture. That's my own contribution.
All right, then. Thank you very much, Mr. Abdul Karim. I saw you nodding to one or two things he was saying there. And you had said earlier that agriculture, for instance, it has to really, we have to get serious with the whole business of industrialization of agriculture. And there's so many things to that. You were even speaking about more than one crop of rice, more than one.
Yes. You have the paddy rice, you have the upland rice.
Exactly.
So we need to do those 2 seasons. And I'm happy with what he said, why I was nodding, because the great thing about government is a continuum. If a previous government has done something right, we don't need to discard it. The wallet system that was introduced by the former Minister of Agriculture was quite effective. And I think we need to continue to run it, where the farmers were getting directly input like fertilizer. There's no point reverting to middlemen where somebody has to take delivery of those things and probably extort the farmers.
And just introduce corruption.
Yes, so we need to, whatever was working in the previous government, we need to adopt it, because, I mean, all the policies are meant for Nigerians.
Okay. Reverend Dominic, thank you for calling in.
Good morning, Chief Yore.
Good morning, Reverend.
You've been keeping me. I don't know if I have a lot to do this. But
and I thought I was quick. I'm sorry, Reverend.
Okay. Please, one thing I would not like us to talk about much is about Ghana experience. If we bring Ghana experience to Nigeria, we know what it means. We who are historians, we can't go that road. It took a very, very painful decision, and something we cannot take in Nigeria. Consider North-Southwest dichotomy we have here, and we can go there. But we need a prudent leader. Buhari is doing well now. But it is painful, because the painful is that it is this. Every commodity that the common man who doesn't spell politics can lay hand on has a strategically out of him. So please, they must find a way out to, do what they call excruciating, to remove this excruciating pain that common Nigerians who voted for change, are yearning for. Me, as Reverend Dominic, I said several times over, people come to my door here, they will shout Baba, they will shout change. Reverend, where is their change? So the issue is painful, honestly, and you know it. Before, I used to use 1,000 naira fuel every day. I use now 1,005, every day. And every day, I mean every day, for 30 days a month. For over 1 or 2 years here, I don't use power. I use generator, even as I'm talking to you now. Things are pretty difficult. How do we come out?
Okay, interesting. Well, we lost you, Reverend Dominic, but only, not before you had really got out the key points. And to start with, he actually made a comparison with Ghana and says he would rather we didn't dwell too much on Ghana because apart from the point that you had also made about Ghana being, what it is in terms of population and size in a different context, he actually opined that the kind of hard-nosed decisions that were made in Ghana by the said Jerry Rawlings you referred to, he feels are impossible in our country because of our, what he must think of as complexities of north, south, east, west kind of a divide. And we were talking about political, perhaps, encumbrances, if not obstructions, to being where we need to be.
Well, you see, the key thing about this, well, that's what in leadership we talk of situational leadership. We have a more complex political structure than Ghana. But we're not the only country with complex political structure. And I always, even if we say we have a complex political structure, we can even draw from our own recent experience. Between 2003 and 2005, when President Obasanjo set up a very strong economic team and provided leadership, we saw a turnaround in this society. We saw a higher level of intertribal bonding. At that point, the issues were no longer where you came from. I'm talking of experience, recent experience, 2003 to 2005. A lot of Nigerians showed a lot more patriotism. People were wearing the lapel pin of Nigerian flag on their jackets, on their suits. I'm talking of the same Nigerians, same generation of Nigerians. So a lot has to do with how leadership approach the people. The job of leadership is about motivation. It's about bringing the energies of the society and harmonizing it to a single force. And I think that's the challenge that the president has to accept and live up to. Okay. The president, fortunately for him, enjoys, like I say, a lot of political capital. He has taken decisions that Nigerians had resisted, even the Obasanjo government. During Jonathan government, an attempt to change the price of fuel led down to the shutdown of this country. So he took that decision, and Nigerians accepted it with equanimity. He took the decision and they changed it. Nigerians have accepted it. Nigerians are going through difficulties. They are not complaining about him. Yes, we are beginning to see whimpers about things are not going on well. But the truth is that if the president completely exploits his goodwill, he can take any decision and focus this country.
Okay. Taufik from Osun State, thank you very much for calling in, and our apologies for keeping you waiting.
That's okay, that's okay. Good morning, Mr. Audi.
Good morning.
And good morning to your guests in the studio.
Good morning.
So in my own contribution, in the way I'm seeing us to get out of this recession, if possible, let the legislator enact a law that any goods we can produce in Nigeria, no matter how bad it is, get a stop importation on it. So that we can be using the one that is bad, without we improve on it. Then we'll get our steps stable. From that, the issue of then, putting more pressure on the dollar on naira, it will be reduced. And secondly, on the issue of agriculture, I believe all people have been saying, let's have direct access from the government. We should not have the intermediary. May God bless Nigeria. Thank you. Good morning.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much. So that's what we must do. But as one gentleman, I think it was Mr. Dede, when he called in, there's no quick fix to this, because you've explained that our economy today is a function of cumulative decisions taken by past administrations. And it's not just about the last one. It's a continuum. You made that point about government being a continuum. Well, it's now come to Buhari and his team, and the decisions that they, I guess it's a bit like if you've been handed lemons, you've got to find a way to make lemonade. In the sense that we find ourselves in. It's just that you've also explained that there might be political consequences to the kind of lemonade you're making, but nevertheless, we must forge ahead, and there's no quick fix to this matter.
No, definitely.
It's not as if things can be fixed in the next 3 months, but indications can be provided to show us that we are on the right path. So I think it's hope. You had said that the finance minister, well, ministers are in the business of selling hope. There's a sense in which the government itself needs to sell to us, the people, that this is the right path that we're treading, and it might be a bit, stressful. Just like they've taken you explained, just like they've taken the fuel situation, they've taken the Naira devaluation, even the corruption one, there are whimpers all over the place, but there still is a heck of a lot more work to be done, right? In terms of thinking and planning, perhaps even thinking outside the box. That seems to be your emphasis. Creative engineering, right?
Yeah. You see, for me, if I were to be in government, apart from stabilizing the economy, one of the things every government should do is it should strive to have tombstones that they will remember forever.
Okay.
And like I mentioned, the issue of cement, the clay will remain with Obasanjo for the rest of the history of this country.
Okay.
Okay. The reactivation of the rail system, the power sector reforms, for instance, the telecom sector reforms remains with Obasanjo for life.
Okay.
Okay. So the areas that Jonathan should have ordinarily gotten his credit should be in the power sector reforms, because he reversed that process. So when that begins to take effect and we have stable power supply, the credit will go to him. Okay. The restoration of the rail transport system, a large part of the credit will go to him. I understand the Kaduna Abuja rail line will be launched on 26th. That's tomorrow. So each government, this government should ask itself. The government's already doing a lot of work on corruption, anti-corruption war. But beyond that, we need to look at which other 2-3 landmarks is he going to leave.
Okay. Ramon from Ajah, thank you for calling in, and please go ahead now. Mr. Ramon, good morning, sir.
Yeah, I really appreciate your guest, rather. I mean, he's really speaking a lot of sense.
So do I. Thank you.
And I concur with him in most of what he has said. May
Thank
God
you.
keep increasing your wisdom. Yeah, I'm a hard fan of Buhari, but I'm quite disappointed on the fact that he's not doing enough motivation as we need. Because the truth of the matter is that everything we need to develop Nigeria is right here. We don't need to travel to any international country to be able to get enough assistance. I can tell you in Nigerian banks, there's a lot of money sitting idle without people having a clear idea of what to do with it. But with a lot of motivation, we can actually make people to start spending that money, and we can have the expansionary we are looking for. A typical example is someone like me. I'm a small entrepreneur. In as much as the father has more money to invest, but it's a fear for me that if I invest this little money, how can I get it back when people are not spending? So it needs to actually give the confidence that we need so that we're able to start making decisions as regards economy individually.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's like this thing is in layers. They have to come up and make tough decisions, and it trickles down. We ourselves, we the ordinary people that they're working, on whose behalf they're working, also have our own decisions to make. Take the gentleman, Mr. Ramon, saying, I'm a small entrepreneur. My paradox now is, how am I going to survive in an era when people are not spending? I suppose it's going, everything is now going to be, well, one has to be very, very observant and creative, and only maybe work in the field that people want to engage in.
You see, that's why we talk of, we've dwelt a lot on restoring confidence. And that's why we talk of confidence in an economy. People take investment decisions and consumption decisions based on the level of confidence that are available in the system. If, for instance, you feel that your salary, the place you work, that the job, your employment is not stable, and therefore you are not sure that when you come to work tomorrow, you will keep the job. You know what you will? When you get your salary, you will save up future everything.
Yes.
Because you will say, okay, let me build for the reserve.
A buffer.
A buffer because I'm not sure. And then when you come here to work, your money is not settled, you won't put in your best. Because you are thinking, when the phone rings and they call you and the human resource manager wants to talk to you, you think the job has gone. So there has to be confidence.
Yeah. And
it is a government, that's their currency. They must sell it. Have you ever seen soldiers going to war?
Yeah.
You know, they sing, they march, they pump their chest, they throw up their guns, they are in action, they are motivated, they know fully well that not all of them will come back from that battle. But they're not afraid because they are gingered up. And that is the role of leadership. We need to spur us to see the opportunities in this economy. You need to create the direction that people should move. And then the population of 180 million, the energies of Nigerians will go into work.
Thank you very, very much, Johnson. Mr. Johnson Chukwu, it's been a very illuminating session for those of us that are not development economists. So we have an inkling into what exactly is going on. And we have Johnson to thank for that. Mr. Chukwu is the MD and CEO of Cowrie Investments. He's a stockbroker and economist. We'll be back tomorrow with a fresh edition. I'm Yori Folari. Bye-bye for now.